Welcome into another edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. It is August 22nd, and we are nearly there. Football season is just around the corner. The high school season will get underway in Texas this week. Brian, how's everything going? And what's new?
Oh, it's good. Football, I guess high school football sort of started. Been scrimmages the last 2 weeks. We're down to,
Yep.
I believe today was 12 days because we had put up the 12th man on the countdown to A&M season. Missed you guys last week. I know Tarp was in for me, and I think he might be joining you again. So,
Yep.
so yeah, man, good to be back on the podcast this week. So just
Yeah.
ready for some football.
Absolutely. And programming, though, we will have Tarp coming up later this week. Gave a great rundown on the offensive side of the ball last week, and I would encourage you to check that out on the Spotify channel. And we'll have him on this week again to look at the defensive side of the ball. And it was a big weekend for Texas A&M. First off, congratulations to Sam Bennett, who took home the U.S. amateur title on Sunday afternoon, and just he had to run through 5 of the top 30 players in the country in the rankings, and basically never trailed throughout match play. And I know, Brian, you watched too, and it was just really impressive to just see, I mean, he just looked so in control at so many times, and had to fend off some rallies at times. But man, when he needed a putt or he needed a big drive, like it was there every single time.
Yeah, he looked left for dead on Saturday. If any of you guys
Yeah.
listening were watching on Saturday, it was incredible. Hole 17, the match was tied, and he's in the rough behind a tree, like with no shot anywhere, and the other guys in the fairway, and they not only did he not lose the hole, he won that hole, and then went on to tie the 18th to take the match. So yeah, he was clutch. I think they said he only trailed for 2 holes the entire week, which in 5 matches is an incredible number. So yeah, he was really good. And A&M's just got to hope now he doesn't just decide, I joked with you, like maybe I don't have to stay for another season. Maybe we could go pro right now. But yeah, it was just a dominant performance.
Yeah, I checked that one off my bucket list. That was one of the things he came back to, said he had. She checked one of them off. So yeah, let's, for A&M's sake, hopefully he stays for a senior year. Because I think, and you mentioned that 17th hole. I thought that was hilarious when he was behind the tree and just said, "I'm just going to hit it hard and hope I kind of get lucky wherever I hit it." That seemed like a great line on the 17th hole, but it didn't look good at that point, and he hadn't been playing well the last couple of holes before that. But to be able to stabilize, hits a nice drive down the 18th, and was able to close it out. So really impressive, and he's going to be fun to watch this season. I know A&M's got big goals as well, and he's going to be a big part of that. You mentioned scrimmages. I mean, kind of going on. I know you and I have both been out at a couple scrimmages and checking out a lot of the A&M commits. Going back now 2 weeks ago, you had the chance to see Dalton Brooks, who, as we've mentioned on the podcast before, is a very quiet kid, doesn't do a whole lot of interviews, and I know this was kind of our first chance to get eyes on him in person. What was your impression getting to see him and talking with him?
Yeah, so we had seen him at camp before, but he just worked out a running back. That was before his junior year. He worked out a running back, which he's going to play safety at A&M. So, it wasn't the same thing. So it's good to drive down there. You never know with scrimmages, though, especially when it's not the week before. It's 2 weeks before the season. I had to call and check with his coach. Hey, is he actually going to be playing some? Oh, yeah. Just real quick answer. And he never – except for when the backups were out there, he never left the field on offense or defense. So a lot of fun to watch. It's really not fair. He's playing in 2A ball. They had a 3A opponent in Tidehaven, which, shout out to Tidehaven. If anybody here's from El Matone, wherever that is, I think it's like near Victoria. But that was a really good team, really good defense. But he's just fun to watch because it's not fair. You can't bring him down on offense. He had an interception on defense. Other than that, they really stayed away from him, but seeks out the ball, really flies to it. He played free safety and strong safety said he's gonna do both at A&M. A&M said, he said as long as he just gets to hit people, that's all he wants. So, he'll get that opportunity for sure in the SEC. He has the ability to get pretty big with his frame in a good way, not in a bad way. So, I think he's a guy you're going to want hitting people. So it's a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, good interview afterwards. Great interview if you get him. And it's not that he's, he's not a diva or anything. He's just quiet, small town kid. A&M has quite a few of those, the quieter personalities in this class. It's not like last year with the Bobby Taylors and stuff. Now, they do their recruiting and, behind the scenes and stuff. But, and, Colton Thomason is, pretty vocal, but, it's not quite the same. Not quite the same as last year, but great kid, great player, solid A&M.
Yeah, no doubt. And you mentioned one of those. I had a chance to see Javon Thomas. I wasn't quite as fortunate. The day I went out to Sauk was a veterans kind of day off where a lot of the Javon Thomas and Malik Muhammad and
that's
like
NFL camps.
Yeah, they gotta.
I think just get to sit like South Oak Cliffs on a state championship. They're like, nah, we're in the league now.
Yeah.
No, it's totally understandable. And I think, it's different than when I was in school, but we used to have 2-a-days and nobody, maybe the kicker every once in a while would get to chill. But yeah, there was no sitting out of practice.
No doubt. I kind of talked to him and I asked him, I said, you guys getting back to practice later this week? He said, yeah, today was just kind of a maintenance day where we, just got to kind of hang out for a day. And they were around the drills and all that. But, so you mentioned, I thought about that when we were talking about the scrimmages, but talking with Javon Thomas too, he kind of mentioned the same stuff about how, he's been doing a lot of recruiting behind the scenes, and another guy that when you go out and see him in person, very talkative, gives great answers, a lot of fun to talk to, doesn't do a ton of, interviews, unless you go see him in person. And so it was good to catch up with him. And he mentioned he's really been working as a recruiter as well with Javion Taviano and Peyton Bowen and, Bravion Rogers, working to get him back in the fold and talking with him still. And, I think you and I have both heard that, the indications are that, A&M is still very much in the mix there to get him back in the fold. So he's still working on him. And, another guy that's going to be really interesting to watch and might play a lot of running back this season. Talking with him about goals for the season, he said he was looking to have 1,000-yard season, and he's played running back in the past. So going to be interesting to watch him on that side of the ball. And I think Sauk might have a couple guys going back and forth. I know Malik Muhammad might play a little receiver at times, and those two. It's still a really, really good start to the backfield with having Dalton Brooks and Javon Thomas kind of anchoring the beginning part of that secondary.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I think Bravion Rogers, great chance of him ending up back. Dalton Brooks, that was the couple names you mentioned. Obviously, Shiner isn't terribly far from LaGrange, and those two know each other well. So he's recruiting him, but he definitely mentioned Peyton Bowen. Seems like everybody. He's one of those guys, I think Colton Thomason keeps having those graphics made for him with, specific guys in A&M uniforms. And, Peyton Bowen is one he's posted about a lot too. So bunch of guys in his ear. And I think Peyton Bowen's now a composite 5-star, and, he's committed to Notre Dame, but A&M, is in, for a kid committed to another school, they're in basically as good a shape they could hope to be in at this point. And those, it's not just a guy that they're bothering, it's not like Javon's just cold calling him, they're close to him, they've gotten to know him at, through different recruiting events. So, and obviously he's open and gets along well with those guys. So it's always a good thing for A&M.
No doubt. And you mentioned Peyton Bowen. A&M's just continuing to plug away there. And, Notre Dame's, obviously still working to keep him in the fold. And, Oklahoma's in there as well. And it seems to kind of be those three schools as kind of the ones to kind of watch for Peyton Bowen. So A&M has really been working hard behind the scenes on that one. And, I think it's still very much has a chance of flipping him. It's just one of those things behind the scenes, like you said. Peyton Bowen, one of the things he's always appreciated about A&M is there doesn't seem to be like a huge amount of pressure on him. They're not bothering him constantly to flip him. They're just staying in communication and continuing to stay in contact. And that's one of the things he's mentioned he's really liked. Sticking on the recruiting trail, you also had the chance to see Samu this past week. What were your impressions getting to see him? And I know
You
he's
didn't want to take a shot at the last name.
You know,
So he doesn't necessarily, he doesn't like, he's a little quieter too, and I think he'll get more comfortable with interviews throughout what's going on, but he didn't necessarily want to do a video on, but I did have him, at least to me, say his name. And I was saying it relatively correctly, because a lot of times with the Polynesian names, you just really pronounce every syllable.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. There were some, I'm not going to get it right when I say it now, because there were some accents, like, or different stressed syllables, but it was, Samu Taumanu Pepe. Now you say it quicker, and there's some different stress,
good.
but you end up saying it. But I was wondering when you said his first name, and I was like,
I looked down and I was like,
people on the board don't even. It's hard to spell too. So he's pretty much just known as Samu now. Nobody really. I mean, there's only one Samu committed, only one, I think, in the that's a recruit, so it's easy. So you just say that, but I just want to see how you were going to do it.
I looked at it. Samu Taumanu Pepe. There we go.
Yeah.
I kind of had it typed down here, and kind of look at it. It's a bit of a tongue, it trips you up at times. So
no, for sure. But I mean, at least it makes sense from the spelling. I'm going to say something that some people, if you haven't been, or if you weren't maybe around me, or because we didn't have podcasts back then, so nobody really heard our voices. So this is way before your time, but there was a linebacker from LaPorte, a 5-star kid that he gets brought up on the board all the time because he never ended up qualifying. He was an A&M commit. They had to cut him loose because he wasn't going to qualify. He didn't end up even graduating from LaPorte. But his last name was Scott, but first name was Hoza. You may have even seen that. And most people would now probably even still just say Jose Scott. It wasn't. I may blow some of your minds, but it was pronounced Jose. So that was Jose Scott. And, as I know when some people found out, they're like, I have been saying that wrong in my head the entire time, and maybe I got a few of you right now, but so now it's the legend of Jose Scott, not Jose Scott. But Samu Taumanu Pepe is pretty straightforward, I guess.
Yeah, that once you say it enough times, you just got to stand in front of the mirror, right, and just continue to say it and nail it at one point. What do you think, getting to see him in action? And I know he's kind of a guy that's lost a lot of weight, and so and gotten better playing shape. What do you kind of think, getting to see him?
All right, so Samu's still a big dude. I mean, it's weird to say like he's trimmed down and say he's at 380. He told us that 380 is what he's at now, and that's what it looks like. 6'3", but he played last year at well over 400 pounds, and his film last year is impressive. So being down to 380, he should have more stamina now. But he's also not a guy that's going to play 15 plays in a row on a long drive. As a pure nose, obviously at that size, he's a nose guard. He's going to play right over, zero tech or just shaded in a one tech. But what he's going to be asked to do is take up blockers. He's going to, double teams, things like that, hold up two guys. Because if you hold up your guy and even another guy, that means the linebacker's free to make plays. So noses, even like, going back to the NFL, like Tony Siragusa and guys like that, they don't put up stats. You just don't. It's not like noses get a ton of sacks or anything. So, watching him in a scrimmage, just saw him at the Houston Touchdown Club banquet 2 weeks ago, and then watch him in a scrimmage this past Friday. He didn't fill the stat sheet, but what he did, he really did. He held up. I mean, the Woodlands has an offensive line that has 4 guys with D1 offers. Good offensive line, big kids, and but he did a good job. The center and the guard, seemingly every play he would just take them on, and that would allow the linebackers to make plays, allow the defensive ends to make plays. So, I mean, he did what's asked of him, and his stamina is better. He still didn't play a ton of plays in a row, but you still keep working. He probably won't see the field for a little while. You keep working with him on that, but I can see what A&M liked in him, because big kid, athletic kid for his size, really strong. It's A&M doesn't really have that nose guard on campus right now. I mean, a guy like Walter Nolan is listed at 310, I think, but if he's 310, he could play at 370 if he wanted to, because I mean, he looks skinny still. So just totally different player. And like, even when you're counting numbers for the class, I mean, he's not a guy that's going to play the same position as anybody else that they're recruiting. They had some guys like Xavier McLeod and some others, but it's been, once they took him, that was it at the position. So he doesn't really affect the numbers any other way. And he's a guy that, the ceiling's going to be interesting. It's not, if nobody should be compared to Jordan Davis. I mean, Jordan, yeah, he was a 3-star in high school as well, but I mean, you just don't see that guy like him come along. But I mean, it's A&M wants that kind of player, a guy that can really make an impact when he's been in there and just throw things, be a disruptor.
No doubt, eat up blocks and free up guys or free up holes for the linebackers and other guys. Sticking on the recruiting trail again, looking at this season, obviously you mentioned it starts on Thursday night. Who are some guys in this class right now that you're looking forward to seeing? Is there a guy that you're keeping a close eye on that you're particularly intrigued to see? I know I've got one in particular, but want to get your take if there's any you kind of are keeping a close eye on.
Well, I didn't know you were going to put me on the spot and say this class, because one guy I knew the question was coming, but one guy, I'm actually going to go a class forward. One guy that I've been wanting to see is Ashton Funk, the junior offensive tackle from Katy Tompkins, because he's another guy that, opinions, everybody thinks he's really good and he's got an impressive offer list, but just sort of how good he is and how high he should be ranked is sort of a little all over the place. But the first week, Katy Tompkins is playing Cy Ranch, and that's Ashton Porter, a 4-star Northwestern defensive end commit. So it'll be Ashton against Ashton in that game, and Ashton Porter's a really good player, big kid, strong kid, but also quick. So I think I'm really, I'm going to try and make it out to that game. Because I believe it's on Thursday night. So Ashton Funk's a guy I really want to see, because he's from an Aggie family too. He's got a really impressive offer list, but always sort of growing up, dreaming of playing for A&M. That doesn't mean he's a lock or anything, but A&M is in really good shape there. So yeah, he's the main one in Texas I want to see. I want to see David Hicks now that he's back in Houston, 5-star at Katy Pato. Now I'm just looking through the list, and I think you're going to get to see him. I'm curious about, TJ Shanahan with the year in Westlake system. Last year, he showed up about this time. I mean, right before the season. So he was sort of just thrown in there, and they said, hey, block the dude who's standing in front of you. So I'm curious how he looks now, especially when everybody knows who he is. He's lost some of the other D1 linemen on the team. So, I mean, he's the guy on that line. So I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year.
Yeah, I'm going to get to see him hopefully on Friday night. Starting out the week, going to Denton Ryan on Thursday night, and obviously, anytime you get to see Anthony Hill, it's a lot of fun, and so we'll have a lot on that. The other guy I'm really interested to see is Michael Louini, and just I've got him kind of looking at the schedule. I've got him, in late September, and looking at that game, and really looking forward to seeing him in kind of game action. And see how he kind of looks in pass protection and all that. We got to see him a little bit in the camps, but looking forward to seeing him. And then Derek McFall as well is going to be a lot of fun. Just to see how Tyler uses him as a running back, as a wide receiver, and just all the ways he can kind of impact the game. Just watching him in practice, you could tell, his athleticism was effortless, and just all the ways he could kind of come out of the backfield and make plays. And then in the class, I'm also really looking forward to Colton Thomason. He's making that move out to tackle, and I think we've mentioned it before, and that's a huge development for A&M. And so looking forward to seeing how the move out to tackle goes for him. I think it's going to go well. I think he's going to have a chance to be really good there, but
if anybody's in San Antonio, there's a triple header at the Alamo Dome Saturday, and there Smith and Valley's playing it, Judson's playing it, so you can see some A&M targets with Colton Thomason and Freddie DeBose at Smith and Valley. You can see Johnny Bowens at Judson, Anthony Evans at Judson. So just a little plug there. Anybody, three football games in one day on opening weekend, So if you happen to be there, man, go get out to the Alamo Dome.
No doubt, and if you're in the DFW area, South Oak Cliff Duncanville is going to be a really good one on Saturday night as well. So that's going to be, I've got South Oak Cliff and DeSoto on the schedule for a couple of weeks from now, and that's going to be a really good one as well. But going to be a lot of really good games to kind of keep an eye on. Those are a couple guys that I'm really looking forward to kind of getting out and seeing, and we'll have plenty more obviously on Thursday night from with Anthony Hill kicking off his season, and then Friday night heading down to see Austin Westlake and see TJ Shanahan and kind of catch up with him. So, the A&M football season is also right around the corner, but as Brian mentioned, season is just 12 days away. If you listen to this on the podcast on Monday, and so we'll break down, some season expectations, best case scenario, worst case scenario coming up right after the quick break. Welcome back into the Gig 'Em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni. Brian, we're kind of hitting the point in the season now. The polls are out. A&M came in at number 6 in the AP poll for the preseason. Predictions, everybody's kind of getting their predictions out the way now, and I know we did one earlier this summer as well. We'll start on a positive note with the A&M side. What's your best case scenario for A&M? If everything goes right this season, what do you think is kind of the best case scenario for them?
I mean, A&M's ranked number 6 for a reason. So everything goes right means whichever quarterback wins the job is really good, as to be expected. The offensive line holds up, and the newcomers do well. And there is actually a downfield passing game this year, which outside of Alabama last year we didn't see. So if that happens, I mean, A&M is ranked number 6 because they're good, and the only team ahead of them in the rankings that they play is Alabama, who comes in number 1. It's in Tuscaloosa, but A&M won last year. A&M has won there before. Now it's been exactly 10 years. Johnny Manziel led them to a win in Bryant-Denny as a redshirt freshman in 2012. But they've won there before, so it's it's not like that's just an impossible task. So I mean, best case is for the regular season 12-0, and then they go and play probably Georgia in the SEC championship game and stay hot. I mean, if they've run through the schedule 12-0, then they're going to have a very legit shot of knocking off Georgia, who I believe is number 3 in the preseason rankings, and the reigning national champion. So yeah, best case, I mean, it's probably a year ahead of schedule, what people would think, but I mean, best case would be bringing home that national title. I don't want people to run with this and say, hey, Perroni picked A&M to win. I mean, a lot of things would have to go right, and a lot of pieces fall into place. But a lot of people do open the season with, like, legitimately, I mean, if you're honest with it, no shot of no shot of winning out and taking the title. But A&M does have that this year, at least a shot.
No doubt. And you mentioned, if everything goes right, I think an undefeated season is certainly attainable. At least 12-0 in the regular season. And you mentioned, I mean, they went 9-1 in an all SEC schedule just 2 years ago. I know the last season people, tend to kind of look at that and mention that when it comes to A&M, but 2 years ago, the only team they lost to was Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And so, is it certainly possible if things were to go right? Certainly. And you mentioned, I think the offensive side of the ball is really where I think there's plenty to be excited about on the defense side of the ball. The question is A&M going to get enough offensively on a consistent basis to be able to run through an SEC West schedule? And that's kind of what I'm looking at as well. I think best case scenario is probably 12-0 as well. And looking at that Alabama game, if you look after that game, there's some tough games in there, but A&M's probably going to be favored in most of them, provided everything's going right at that point. So, for me, I'm kind of with you there. And on the defense side of the ball, I think they've got obviously a ton of depth on the defensive line, a ton of depth in the secondary. And, if they can get enough play at the linebacker spot with Edgerrin Cooper obviously there and somebody else to kind of step in with him, I think the defense is going to be really, really good. And, and then obviously, to look at the other side, what do you think is kind of the floor, the worst case scenario for A&M? And this is where people,
Yeah, both my quotes
people are
from the
gonna kind
last answer and this answer are just gonna be like, whatever, just
of
quoted
splice
out of
together. Yeah,
context. Yeah. All right, so this is where that stretch, you've talked about it a lot. There's the stretch, it's a whole month. So A&M
yeah,
is at home against Miami, which Miami it's a good team. People are not talking about them enough. A&M will be favored, but Miami is a good team. They're at home against Miami on September 17th. They do not play at home again until October 29th, and that's against Ole Miss. So that stretch, it's Arkansas at AT&T Stadium, which I mean, after seeing last year, Arkansas beat A&M for the first time in SEC play last year. That's a tough contest. And then you've got at Mississippi State, then at Alabama, and then a week off and at South Carolina. Now, A&M has never lost to South Carolina in the SEC, but they got Spencer Rattler there. They're supposed to be much improved. They're getting some votes in the preseason poll. So, I mean, that stretch of 4 games, Mississippi State, no matter
yeah.
who the coach is at A&M, Mike Leach has always sort of given A&M fits and, sort of proved that last year. So all 4 of those games are tough. And then it's not like around it is that easy because you got Miami before it. And then afterwards, Florida, and then, Ole Miss and Florida after it. So, I mean, it's just the
It's a
sandwich in the
gauntlet.
middle.
Yeah,
That's a tough schedule. Now, I mean, the teams may not be ranked incredibly high outside of Miami, and then I would expect Ole Miss to probably be ranked.
yeah,
But I mean, let's say you lose, the Miami game or lose the Arkansas game. That's when, you're like, now we got 3 games in a row on the road, and
yeah,
things just sort of, in your mind, you could lose 3 out of those 4 games. I don't
yeah.
think it'll happen, but if we're just talking about realistic, that could happen. And you do that, and it just sort of sets off the, sort of just like a avalanche down the hill of just, almost like self-fulfilling prophecies. If you think, oh, we're, maybe we're not as good as we thought. So, I mean, 7-5, 8-4. I don't think that'll happen, but
Yeah.
it's a possibility. I mean, it's a tough schedule.
I don't. I think so too. And yeah, I got this idea. Watching Josh Payton. Hat tip to him. He did this last night with a lot of teams, and he kind of had worst case scenario as 7-5 as well. And I think that would obviously be a massive disappointment. Considering a lot of things went wrong last year, A&M still won 8 games, and so
Yeah.
you lose your starting quarterback, you lose a ton of guys along the offensive line, and so 8-4 for me would kind of be the worst case scenario, just because I think A&M is more talented this year than they were last year. They're in a better spot at the quarterback position with Max Johnson and Haynes King there, and so below that, I think would be a huge disappointment, and would probably bring questions about changes needing to be made, at A&M under Fisher. But I don't foresee that happening. I think 8-4 is kind of the floor for this team. You mentioned that tough road stretch, and that's what kind of gets my eye as well in terms of, if there was this part of the schedule that was going to trip A&M up, it's that part right after Miami until they get back home where the schedule is just really, really tough. But I think this team is equipped to kind of handle that, especially with the talent that they have on the defensive side of the ball. I don't see anything less than kind of 8 wins happening this season, and that being kind of the worst case scenario, just because I think this team's more talented than they were last year. So what concerns do you have? Are there particular positions that you're kind of looking at with this team outside of maybe the schedule that you feel like are going to be key if A&M is going to step forward?
Wide receiver, quarterback, and wide receiver. Quarterback,
Yeah,
obviously, but receiver with Anaya Smith has come back, Chase Lane's coming back, but I mean, last year there was. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I just say no downfield pass game. There's really wasn't. I mean, it was just, hey, pick up a first down, pick up a first down. You need that deep play threat, and okay, Evan Stewart's there. Evan Stewart's really good. He's a true freshman though. We've never seen him,
yeah,
on the field on Saturdays. Chris Marshall, true freshman. Noah Thomas, true freshman. All these guys are really good, but what happens? We all expected Damon Demas to come in, 2 years ago and have that same impact as a true freshman, and he didn't. Now there's more talk in camp about these 3 than there were about about him, but still, that's probably the main one. Obviously, all of them, offensive line, no matter who you are, what year. I mean, A&M's listed as like one of in the best shape among returning offensive linemen, and yet I don't think Aggie fans would tell you they were completely comfortable with the offensive line. So everybody's got issues there, but so yeah, it's really the receivers. Will these young guys be able to step up, be able to handle how physical it is? I don't think you can really understand what it's like, how big the SEC corners and safeties are, and how fast they are. So they're gonna sort of baptism by fire, and I would say how those guys go will be possibly how the team goes.
No doubt, and I think I'm with you, and then that'll allow other guys to kind of settle in. Obviously, Anais Smith will allow you to kind of move him around and use him as a weapon, and Chase Lane as well. And so there are a couple veterans you can rely on, but they do need a guy like Evan Stewart to step up in that receiver room and just give it more explosiveness and more ability to create big plays. And that's something we talked a lot with Tarp last week about, is being able to have those quick strike 20-30 yard plays to not have to string drives together and be able to put together an 8-9 play drive in order to score. I think that's one of the biggest keys. And then for me, just keeping an eye on the linebacker position. I think that's a room we've talked about that if injuries kind of hit that room, like they might need some young guys to step up. And so those are the two. And we've kind of hit on both ends of the extremes now. And we've given our predictions before. For me, I mean, this is a 10-win team. I think this is a team that 10 wins is probably attainable as kind of the expectation to have. That trip, as I've said before, that tough stretch in the middle of the season kind of concerns me. And I think you could see A&M slip up in one of those games, but the Mississippi State game you mentioned, Mike Leach has always kind of given A&M problems regardless of who is there. So I think 10 wins, and I think that would be perfectly fine. I think as long as you get to double-digit wins and can kind of take that next step and be in position to potentially be challenging for a college football playoff spot, I think a lot of A&M fans would be happy with that, and you'd have a lot to build off going into next season. But I think there's certainly a chance. 11-1, 12-0 is certainly attainable if everything goes right and goes perfectly. And where do you kind of see? I know having given it early in the summer, has it changed at all of 11 wins that you mentioned earlier?
I'm just, man, looking at the schedule, just every time I stare at that, that's tough. They did not do them any favors, because you look at it, it's like 3 road games in a row is a whole lot. And then you throw the bye week and then Arkansas, the neutral site game. I mean, that's crazy. So
it's
the
insane.
more that settles in, the more that settles in, the more I'm like, that's tough. Even, I mean, A&M's they should be favored in all of those games. They should be favored in every game but Alabama.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows if something goes wrong one of those. So I'd say 10 wins is probably a good and this is one of those teams that could be 12 wins, it could be 8, and I don't, none of them would just shock me. Now I don't think it'll be 8, but it wouldn't, looking just because of the schedule. If this was just a normal schedule like other years, home, you throw in your Vanderbilts, when it's at Arkansas's, still down, and I'd say, you got time to, breathe in between those, so they shouldn't lose them. But honestly, don't know. Now something we've talked about before, and we've been on the same page, but maybe things have changed. I'm gonna put you on the spot. We didn't talk about this. So who trots out at quarterback for for the opener against Sam Houston? Again, we've talked about this. We've had our predictions, but I don't know, have things changed in your mind?
Man, I think, and I have to give him a lot of credit. I think, the buzz that we've been hearing and the performances that Haynes King has kind of, had during fall camp, talking with Tarp about, what he's kind of heard on the fall camp scrimmage side. For me, I would tend to give him the edge. Would you kind of lean that way? I know we both kind of thought coming out of
we both were
like, boy,
Haynes King. Haynes King for until the spring. They were like, okay, I think it's Max Johnson's job to lose. I'd say Haynes King again. And I think he's sort of, gone out and grabbed it. And if all else is equal, he's got the legs. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys on the team, and that adds a completely different dimension to the offense. So yeah, if I had to put a bet down, I would now say King. I was King, and then Max Johnson in the spring, just because all the quarterbacks sort of struggled, but I was like, he's got the experience. But I'm back in the King camp now.
The King. But you know what, and I'll give him a lot of credit too, regardless of how this, quarterback position kind of shakes out over the next, 2 weeks or so. Both guys have kind of responded to the challenge. This hasn't been a case where one guy's been playing badly or struggling and another guy's gone ahead and taken it. The competition has really been positive in that room specifically. And Haynes King has had to go out and really win this job. I know he won it coming out of last summer, and if he is the guy, that he's definitely earned it. And Max Johnson as well, having to come in and compete. Both guys have really pushed each other, and kind of Wigman's in there as well. And there's a lot of optimism about the future. But A&M's in a good spot, having two guys that they can rely on. That, as I mentioned, I think really elevates the talent room and that quarterback. At that quarterback position. It's kind of gone back and forth, and it's been a fun battle to kind of follow, and we'll see. Jimbo Fisher could opt not to even name a starter. You and I have talked about that before. Talking about the
somebody's got to come trotting out there, even if you don't name a starter. So even if it's rotated series, somebody has to come out for the first snap. He's like Thomason waiting out there for one snap, but. No, I guess I don't know why we're actually debating it, because I don't think it's up to Fisher. If I've learned anything this past week, I think isn't it the alumni and donors get to choose the starting quarterback?
Right?
No matter who.
Place a call.
I don't know exactly what happened in Austin.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what happened in Austin, but there was the rumors that the team, or at least Hudson Card, had been told he was the man. I mean, multiple outlets reported that Hudson Card was starting QB. And then the next day, randomly, just in the middle of media session, like Sark sends a text to the SID, says, no, Quinn Ewers is our starter, and just names some weird timing. Now, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was I'm not saying, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if there's a conspiracy that I'm want to believe, it's that one.
But I'll give you credit though, because I was having some stuff done around the house last week, and kind of saw your tweet come through of, was there an announcement made or something like that? And that's where I actually saw that Ewers had been named the starting quarterback, because
my entire feed was all about Quinn Ewers.
Because just the day before, Sark had said something about how he was going to wait probably until after the scrimmage. That he had his mind mostly made up, but was going to wait until after the scrimmage. And then, like you mentioned, the next day, all of a sudden, the announcement gets made from the SID, just kind of coming out during the players.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, who did the big money Aggies? Yeah, who did the big money Aggies think is supposed to be A&M starting quarterback? Like,
for those of you who are listening to this, if you have somebody,
if you want to, let us know who you have chosen as your starter quarterback.
But I think it's gonna be fascinating. We'll see. If Fisher even wants to announce it. It's always funny listening at the press conferences when he's asked kind of when he has a timeline and all that, and he said, whenever I'm ready to name a starting quarterback. I don't think he's in
We've been through this 2 or 3 times with them already. So
last time he picked a kind of I think it was the Tuesday morning of the game week to kind of just say, okay, here we go, and we're gonna go ahead and
with Kellen Mond over Nick Starkel, he never even announced it. It just we shared it, but he it's just, according to A&M, it's just he trotted out for that first snap, and that's when people found out officially. So
exactly. So we'll see how he chooses to do this. A&M's had their last scrimmage this weekend, and so it could come at any point, or he could wait into next week. He's kind of going to make it on his timeline, but we will certainly have you guys covered on everything leading up to the season. It's right around the corner at this point. As I mentioned, we'll have Tarp on later this week as we kind of get into in-season mode. We'll be going to multiple podcasts per week. Actually on Mondays and Wednesdays, if you're watching this on YouTube, and kind of talking recruiting, talking the season and all that. So definitely make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube to get the latest notifications every time a new video drops. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify and iTunes to get the latest on new podcast there as well. Brian, yeah, we're almost there. Next time we kind of talk, we'll be into game week probably, and we'll be breaking down Fisher's first game week press conference next week. So have a good rest of your week, everybody, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.